So now, Miles, we are at the meat and potatoes of this build, okay? We just did probably one of the ugliest things that we had to do originally, and probably one of the most important things, which is figuring out that system prompt, okay? I walked you through everything how to do that. All right, so you guys just cook this up in real time. The next thing that we're gonna do right now, Miles, is we are gonna start diving into the different components that go into a voice AI, all right? And by now, you guys should know what these different components are, right? We have the speech to text, text to speech, the large language model, and all these different settings, they live at this very top bar right here, okay? So let's go ahead and start covering every single tab one by one, right? The model tab is obviously where we're gonna be selecting our large language model, AKA the AI. So right now you can see we have it on OpenAI. If I click the drop down, you're gonna see a list of different models. These are all just different AI companies. Right here is Grokky. So what we're gonna do is we are actually gonna be using Grokky. And the way I'm going to use Grok is by literally just clicking on XAI. The beautiful thing here about Vappy is that we don't actually have to go out to Grok and get an API key and put it inside of Vappy. It's already here. It's already being paid for. All we have to do is just select it and choose whichever model flavor we want from inside of Grok. And look, as I click this drop down right here, you're going to see things that you should be at least now, starting to get familiar with, the non-reasoning and the reasoning. You can see that there are other models like Grok 3, Grok 2, Grok 4. And Miles, I want you to pay attention to something right here. As you look at the different flavors of the model, what do you notice right under them?
There's 400 milliseconds, which is probably how long it takes to process, and then the cost. So 1 cent, 15, 10, 15.
Exactly. So this actually makes it a little bit easier to make a decision on the flavor. Remember, right, we have two big bars at the very top. One of them is the price per minute, and one of them is latency. And I explained to you what these two are, but basically every component has its own little tiny pricing that's a part of it. And this right here gives you that latency up front, so that way you know exactly what you're selecting ahead of time. Remember, you have to make a decision, right? You want something that's a little bit smarter, but maybe a little bit slower, which in this case, maybe you would go with something like Grok 3. You can see that this one costs definitely much more. It probably is a reasoning model, has a little bit more capability, and that's why it's at 800 milliseconds compared to this one, which is twice as fast as this one, right? This one's at 400. So off the bat right now, if we're building something that does not require too much complexity, I'm going to leave it at Grok 4 fast non-reasoning, okay? That's going to be the very, very top right here. And then right under it, you have that first message. Thank you for calling da-da-da. We're going to change this. What do we want our first message to be for this plumbing business?
Well, we want to think about who the plumbing business is, right? Is it Platinum Plumbing?
At this point, we're just making a template, right? We're making a demo. We're just making a template. It doesn't really matter, right? What we want to do is we want to create one first message that is said no matter what. And the thing about this first message is we don't want it to be too robotic, right? We want it to have a little bit of flavor. We want it to have a little bit of personality to it. So we could do something like, hey, with two Y's, okay, and exclamation mark. And believe it or not, bro, the actual model understands this and actually pronunciates it. So when you say hey with two Y's, instead of it saying hey, it'll say hey, right? So you can see one of them sounds a little bit, more realistic. One of them sounds a little bit more robotic. So we can add two Y's or maybe even three, right? You can test and figure out which one sounds the best as you're going to be testing this model. But for now, let's just make it something very simple. Okay, we're going to say, hey, two Y's with exclamation mark. And we're going to say, thanks for calling. And then here, we would throw in the company name. Obviously, right now, we don't have a company name. So I'm going to leave that part out. I'm going to say, thanks for calling. What can I help with today? Question mark. Very, very simple, very straightforward, but we're going to keep it at that. And later when we start personalizing these demos, we're going to start throwing the company name in this first message.
Okay.
And obviously we have our system prompt already, so we don't have to worry too much about that. The only thing you would have to worry about is throwing in obviously the personalized information in there, like the company's name, the knowledge base, which we're going to get to literally in a little bit. But for right now, we're going to keep it as it is. And just for testing purposes, I'm actually going to remove this and just throw a random plumbing company name here. So let's just say Miles Company LLC, right? It doesn't matter. While we're at it, just because we throw this in here, we might as well just throw it in the first message. So, hey, thanks for calling Miles Plumbing LLC. What can I help you with? Because I made these two changes, and obviously after every change you make, you want to click this green button at the very top that says publish. Otherwise, your changes don't get published. And then here, you're going to click skip and publish very, very quickly. And boom. So now our changes officially solidified. You can see immediately that the latency dropped, probably because we chose a large language model that has quicker latency. So now we're in that 850 millisecond range. This is very, very good. Now, Miles, this entire thing is one scrollable page, okay? But when you click these tabs up front, it just takes you to the part where it exists in that scrollable page. So you can see right now, like if I scroll a little bit, I'm at the voice configuration. But if I'm at the very top and I just wanted to quickly get to the voice configuration, I'm going to click voice and you can see it just scrolls down. It just takes me right where I need to be. And here's where we're going to be configuring that text-to-speech model, right? This is the thing that's going to be taken in the text and making it an AI voice. And you can see here we have also a bunch of different providers. I actually really like using Vappy's Elliot, and there's actually 2 reasons why, okay? Let me explain to you the first one, which is a very, very important one, but it's a little bit technical. So I'm going to explain it to you very quickly so that way you know what's happening. So obviously, Miles, we have a bunch of different components that go into a voice AI. Really what's happening when you tie these things together, Miles, is that these components, Miles, they don't live in the same exact house, okay? What that means is you see them, they're all together inside of Vappy, right? You can just click and choose. But actually what's happening is every single time you click a model, you are actually clicking on a server that somewhere lives out in the real world that is hosting that model. And so what happens is, and so really what it looks like, Miles, is that you think these things are just super close to each other, right? They're very connected. But really what it looks like is something like this, okay? These different components, they're actually at completely different parts of the world. So what happens is a phone call comes in to the telephony component, okay? And this telephony component has a phone number, and its job is to forward that call to the next component. What happens is it will literally send these pieces of information that it needs to send over the internet, okay? So let's just say this is the internet. And once everything goes over to the internet, maybe it goes to the text-to-speech company, the component that's responsible for that. And this guy does its job and then sends the next thing to a whole other thing over the internet. Maybe it's the speech-to-text model. So you can see what's happening here, Miles, is this is happening very, very quickly, but it's actually traveling over the internet to completely different houses, right? To completely different parts of the internet. Now, one of our components is the voice, right? The voice is the text-to-speech. Right now, Miles, if we wanted to use something like 11 Labs as our text-to-speech, okay? Let's just say this right here is 11 Labs. And let's just say, you know, between the telephony and between 11 Labs is Vappy, okay? So telephony doesn't actually send directly to 11 Labs. It sends to Vappy right here. Now, this is not actually what happens, but I'm just giving you a quick example what happens. So telephony goes and sends it to Vappy. And Vappy knows that at this point, it needs to send this thing to a text-to-speech model, which is owned by 11 Labs. So what it's going to do is it's going to go ahead and send this stuff over the internet. When it sends this over the internet, Miles, this takes time, correct? Sending something over the internet takes time. And we know that in our world, time is equal to latency, right? And we know that our main job is to save time. So if we can somehow still get a voice, which is text-to-speech, without sending it somewhere else, right? Would we not be technically saving all of this time where Vappy would have to send that to 11 Labs and then 11 Labs would have to then send it to somewhere else?
Yeah.
That's basically the idea here, is that if you are using Vappy's native voices, because you're generating the speech within Vappy, Vappy does not have to send that information to 11 Labs or to whatever text-to-speech model that's somewhere out there on the internet. Therefore, you're actually making the latency better. You are decreasing the latency by making sure that you're just using something that's in-house, right? Vappy does not have to send anything to another text-to-speech model. It is the text-to-speech model. So now what happens is it goes from telephony to Vappy and then to the speech-to-text model, right? Just for an example, that's not the actual flow, but you can see right now is we just cut out a completely different route. Right now, instead of having 4 routes, we have 3. We have 1, 2, technically 2, right? But then otherwise, if we were using 11 Labs, maybe it would go something like this: 1, 2, 3. Whereas right now we have 2. So we cut a route completely, which means we saved the time that Vappy would have had to take to send that information to a text-to-speech model, then have it processed, and then these guys would then send it to whoever it needs to get sent to. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
So what we're doing here, Miles, is in the voice section, if we chose Vappy's Elliot, we are technically not going somewhere on the internet to get that speech, okay? We're staying in Vappy's house, which is going to cut our latency by a lot. And let me prove this to you, right? I'm going to deselect Vappy, and I'm going to go to 11 Labs, and I'm just going to click on, you know, some random voice. Right now, you can see we're at 850, okay? We haven't actually published this. We're at 850 latency. As soon as I go back to the voice, and I select 11 Labs, the Sarah voice, for example. You know what? I'm going to select one of these models. So let's just say I select this 11 multilingual V2 model, okay? And I select Sarah. I'm going to click publish, skip and publish, and now I want you to look at the latency. What happened to it?
That shit shot up. It's
It
gonna
just
take
shot up
forever.
like crazy, right? 1800 milliseconds. Now, mind you, this doesn't happen with everything, okay? There are some models that are on the other side that might be even quicker than Vappy. For example, something like, instead of the multilingual, let's just say you use 11 Flash V2.5. This one is a very fast model, but it's not as smart, okay? It's not designed to be smart. It's designed specifically for Q&A and answering questions, and that's it. So right now, if I click this model and skip and publish, look at what happens to the latency now. Right? We dropped. We're at 675. What is wrong with you, bro? So we're at 675 now, okay? But you get the idea here is that these different components right here, they all play into the latency and they all play into the pricing. And you have to be mindful of these things because if you wanted to design something that's maybe a little bit quicker but very stupid, well, you can get away with using 2.5. But maybe you don't want to do that, right? Maybe we want something that's a little bit smarter. Maybe it has a little bit more intelligence to it. And from a voice perspective, we like this Elliot voice for Vappy, right? We want to save that latency. You can choose that option and then click publish on it, and you can see what happens is now you have a good balance of both worlds. By the way, these different text-to-speech models, their latency directly correlates to the quality of the voice. If I didn't choose Vappy, okay, if I chose 11 Labs and I chose one of their higher-end models, okay, because I chose this maybe Flash V2.5 and latency dropped, this actually tells me that the quality of the voice might not be as good as something like this 11 multilingual V2.
Why is it like that? Do you have an explanation for why?
The reason why is because people want to have options. Let's just say you are building something for your own company, and that something doesn't have to sound very realistic, it just needs to get the job done. So you don't want to spend those extra pennies or extra dollars for something that sounds way more realistic. Instead, you're happy with something that maybe is a little bit less quality, but still gets the job done. That's why. So these are all just different options, okay? Does my company want something that really does sound realistic, or do they just want something that gets the damn job done no matter what it sounds like? That's the decisions you have here when you're choosing between different models inside of the text-to-speech models. So right now I'm actually going to switch it. I'm going to put it back into Vappy's Elliot, and then we're going to keep it at that. And now we don't have to click publish because this is already the default selection. So boom, now we just selected the voice configuration. Right under it, you have two different drop downs, okay? Let me explain to you what these are because these are also very important. If I click on this, you're going to see a setting right here that says background sound, and you have a bunch of different options right here. This setting right here is responsible for when you're talking to the voice AI. What do you want the background to be? Do you want it to sound like the AI is at an office? Do you want there to be no sound at all? Or do you want it to just be the default? Whatever that default is, you're going to get to listen to it and hear what that is. Or you can make it something custom, where in this case, you can actually maybe upload your own sound in here and it would use that sound as the background sound when it's talking to people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think an office would be the most realistic, you know what I mean? Because it'll sound like there's stuff going on in the background
And you would think that this is the most preferred option. Actually, sometimes I had companies come to me where they're like, yo, we don't want this thing to sound like it's a real, like, human. Take the office out because they're going to think that the AI is in an office and they're going to think that, when they ask for an escalation, that they can just go somewhere and transfer the call to somebody. Again, you don't make these decisions on your own. This is something that the company that you're building this stuff for is going to have to make a decision for you. But for the demo, right, we're going to keep it as office just because we know maybe this is realistic and we like the office sound. Right under that, you have punctuation boundaries. For the most part, this is an advanced option. You don't really need it. It doesn't do too much for your guys' use case. But if you want to really understand it, you'd have to kind of understand how chunking works and how things are being sent to and from the different large language models. So we're going to leave this as it is. We're not really going to touch it. Right under it, you have a speed setting, okay? This is the speed of the voice that's coming out. Do you want it to sound slow when it talks? Or do you want it to sound a little bit faster when it talks? Here's where we're going to get to play with this level. And we're going to say, you know what, the middle is 1. But maybe we want it to sound a little bit slower because the person on the other line is maybe older in age and they don't like when somebody speaks fast. So if this voice AI was being talked to by maybe older people that need that slowness, you can then slow it down here a little bit. Or maybe, you know what, we want it to be a little bit quicker. We don't want to wait too long. So you can actually increase the speed of that right here.
What if somebody called the voice agent, right? And say it was like older person and the speed of the voice agent was very quick and the person over the phone said, "I didn't quite understand that. Could you possibly speak a little bit slower?" How would the voice agent react to that? Would it talk slower?
It would not talk slower because the actual speed is not controlled by the voice AI itself. It's controlled by the people that build it. It will say, I'm going to talk slower because it's just generating text, right? It doesn't even know what's happening outside of that text generation. It has no idea about all these different things, right? The model itself, the brain itself, has no idea about all these different settings. It just knows that it needs to generate text as a response to what's being said to it. So if whatever is said to it is, please speak slower, it's going to say, okay, yeah, sure, I'm going to speak slower. But the setting itself for speaking slower isn't changing because it has no ability to change its own settings for how quick and how slow it can speak. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yes.
So we're going to leave this one at 1.05. Right under it, fallback voices, okay? What this means is if there is for some reason something wrong with the text-to-speech model, right? Let's just say the server that model lives in goes out, or there's an outage in the company, or the company burns, where this server is not working anymore. What you can do is you can say, if Vappy's Elliot, the actual server that's processing this text-to-speech, if this doesn't work, I want you to go to a fallback voice and use that fallback voice in case this one is down. So that's what this section right here. And if you click add fallback voice, it's literally just going to give you another configuration. And the only time this would get used is if Vappy Elliot is completely unavailable because it's down. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It'd be helpful to configure a fallback voice because if for some reason this is down, guess what's going to happen? Company's going to call your phone. They're going to say, hey, our voice system is not working. Come fix it. And if the issue is something wrong with this, well, that's where your problem is. You're going to come here and you're going to have to switch it out. But if you have this fallback, then you don't really have to do nothing. It just automatically goes to the fallback. So it's a very handy feature for that use case. We're going to delete that. We don't really need it. Right under it, you have the transcriber settings. And again, you can get to this just by clicking on the transcriber. The transcriber models is, again, the speech to text model. It's going to take the speech, it's going to transcribe it, and it's going to turn it into text. For the most part, this is fairly simple. We're going to keep this as Deepgram, okay? This is a very, very good company. But you can see if I click the drop down, there's a bunch of different ones that all do the same thing. You can see 11 Labs does the same thing. OpenAI does the same thing. All these different companies. Deepgram is my go-to. And then the model, right? You have different Deepgram models, kind of different flavors inside of it. You can see that there is Nova 2, Nova 3, there's Flux General, and you can see that there's different flavors even within the model. For example, if the voice AI that you're building is for a finance company, this Nova 2 Finance, where is it right here? This one would be designed to understand some of that finance terminology, and when it's transcribing it, it's not going to misspell it or say it completely wrong because it just has no idea about that. These models are trained on finance terminology. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Now you can see there's general settings, there's medical. For example, if you're building a voice AI for a medical, obviously medical terminology might not be the same as general terminology. So if somebody uses a medical term, you want to make sure that that transcription is accurate. And so therefore you would then select Nova 3 medical. But for the most part, you're good with choosing just Nova 3 or Nova 3 general. Either way, both of these are very, very good for everything, right? In general. I'm actually going to keep it as Nova 3, and right under it, you have an option for background denoising enabled. Always have this enabled. What this is going to do is it's going to filter background noise while the user is talking. Now, this is a common problem with voice AI systems is somebody would be talking behind the actual person that's on the call, and the voice AI would pick up those words and take them as user input for the person that's talking to it. In reality, that's just background noise. So if you click this on, that should help filter some of that background noise so that way it's not getting confused with who's actually talking to it. Does that make sense?
100%.
This one's a little bit weird to explain to you guys. So all I did was I threw it into ChatGPT. I'm going to explain it to you while reading this. So hopefully this makes it a little bit easier. When the transcription model hears speech and it needs to convert that speech into a word, sometimes a word might sound like another word, which in that case, it needs to have a confidence level for how much it believes that transcription is accurate. And if for some reason it gets to a transcription and it's like 40% confident that this transcription is wrong, you can actually remove that word completely from being sent back in the generation of that model. That's basically what this is explained to you right now. It says if you put this at a lower level, you can keep more text, including the uncertain parts, right? The model is not fully certain that the word that it heard is the word that it described, but it's going to keep it anyways, which means you're going to get more complete sentences, but possibly they're going to be less accurate. Whereas on the other hand, if you put it at a higher level, this would filter out those low confidence parts. If it hears something and that percentage of what that transcription that it generated is maybe less than 70, it's just going to completely filter it out and not send it back. So what this is going to do is this is going to give you maybe a little bit of a cleaner transcription, but it might miss words. So this is a very dangerous setting right here. If you put it in a higher level, the best thing you can do is put it kind of, a little bit less than the 50%, right? You want to put it at 40%. The reason why is because if it's more than 40% confident that the transcription that it did is what the word is, just throw it in there and keep it. And this should mitigate any problems with words just completely getting missed in the actual text that gets sent back to the model. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Now, right under that, you have a setting that says use numerals. Okay, what this is for is this converts numbers from words to actual digits in the transcription. Remember, if you say the word 7, it could either be written as the literal number 7 or it could be the word 7, S-E-V-E-N. When you transcribe, make sure that you either use the digit or just keep the word itself.
I was going to ask, would you use that if somebody was saying, I want to book an appointment at 7:30 a.m. or something like that?
Now, here's where this would be, considered or even looked at as useful. These speech to text, they're taking speech and they're converting it to text. And then that text would then need to be, again, converted back to speech. So if the model that's responsible for converting that text back to speech performs better when it is a digit instead of a word, this is when you would be turning this setting on and off. So this fully relies on the thing that it's being sent to afterwards, right? You gotta remember, every word that's being transcribed is gonna have to become a voice at some point. And the way that it becomes a voice is through that text-to-speech model. So if the text-to-speech model is good enough to handle either or, it doesn't really matter, then technically you don't really have to even touch this. But if that text-to-speech model cares about it specifically being a digit or specifically being a word, that's when you're going to come here and you're going to have to either toggle this on or keep it off. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. Right under that, you have a profanity filter. This basically just replaces the word fuck and shit with asterisks, okay? If you don't want any profanity that's being sent to and from these transcripts, you can just toggle this on and it will just automatically replace them. So that way what happens is when that text gets sent to the text-to-speech model, your speech itself is not going to have cuss words in it. It's just going to have asterisks, so it's just not going to generate all those cuss words. And of course, this could be any word that you think needs to be filtered. So you could just turn that on and then put the key terms right under it.
What word do you think needs to be filtered out anymore?
And right under that, you have fallback transcriber. This is, again, if your primary transcriber fails, right? Just kind of like how we did earlier with the voice. If it fails, these providers are going to be tried so that way your system stays up and it doesn't completely fail. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And that's pretty much it for the transcriber section. Right under it, we have tools, okay? This is a very important section for when you want your AI to be actually doing things. And right now I'm gonna skip over tools because we are gonna configure tools at some point. I'm gonna explain to you everything about tools and how you configure them once we get to that point. But for right now, I'm just gonna skip this tool section and these two drop downs that are part of the tool section just because we're gonna dive into it later when we're actually configuring our own tools. And then right under it, you have a section called analysis, okay? What this is responsible for is this is helping you extract specific pieces of information once that call actually ends. Things like the call summaries, the actual customer's details, the first name, the last name, what was said, the actual transcript of the call, all these different things could be extracted and sent maybe to another AI automation once the call is ended. So we're going to skip over this, right? It's not going to be something that we need to do just to get up and running. It requires a little bit more understanding about what JSON is and what a schema is. And I'm not going to go through and explain that to you guys right now because I want you to get up and running as quickly as possible. So we're going to skip through this structured output. I'm going to explain it probably in some other video later. Right under that, you have compliance, okay? This section you guys can see is grayed out. This is if you're on the enterprise plan, you can choose to record and do consent. This is not going to be something that we even have access to, so I'm going to skip over this for now. And right under it, you have different privacy settings. Remember, we talked about HIPAA compliance. This is something that you enable, and this is a cost to it. This is only relating to companies that have to deal with medical, okay? We're not going to touch HIPAA right now, so we're going to leave this. Same thing with zero data retention, basically saying that we're not going to keep any information on Vappy server. This is also an extra cost and it's more advanced, so we're going to skip over this for now. And then right under that, you have the option for audio recording, okay? You could record the conversations by these conversations are recorded, okay? We're actually going to use this to our advantage to figure out who's calling and who's not calling our system. And the way you get to these audio recordings is going to be on the left side on the word next to the word logs. So, okay, so if I click on logs, right now it says no calls found. But when people start calling the voice AI, you're gonna get to hear these conversations here, and you're gonna get to see all the transcripts and basically everything that's happening and all these different details relating to that conversation. Again, by default, this is turned on its own. If you chose to turn it off or you want no calls to be recorded, or the company doesn't want any calls to be recorded, you can do that right here. And logging, this is just for storing those calls. Do you want those calls to be stored after they happen? This is a privacy setting. If you want them to be stored, turn this on. If not, turn this off. And the same thing you have for the transcript, okay? Do you want a transcript to be generated during those phone calls, right? The transcript is gonna have what the AI said and what the person that was talking to us said. If for some reason you want that off, you're gonna get to turn it off right here. And then here you have the audio recording format. What is that audio, okay? Is it WAV or is it MP3? If for some reason you wanted it to be MP3, you can make that option right here. For the most part, it won't really matter for you. And for video recording, this does not matter for us because we are not doing this stuff during a web call. So this is just gonna be off. All right, Mal, so now we're at the advanced setting. This is the last tab right here at the very top. And here what you're gonna get to decide is a bunch of different settings about how the voice AI itself actually operates. One of the first settings you have is your start speaking plan. What this is a bunch of different settings for when and how the AI assistant should start talking. And let's look at this very first one, right? The more you look at it, the more it's gonna make sense. And within this, there's a bunch of different things that control aspects of when it should start speaking. So, like, for example, this very first one, this wait seconds, right under it, it tells you exactly what this is. This is how long the assistant waits before speaking. So when somebody says something to it, what is the time that the AI should wait before it actually does respond to person? And you can see you have anywhere between 0 seconds to 5 seconds. The closer to 0 means it's going to try to immediately say something and not wait at all. And if you put it towards the other end, 5 seconds, well, now it's just going to completely wait exactly 5 seconds before it responds. Obviously, this is going to be a little bit overkill for a lot of times. In order to make sure that this is natural, you're going to want to keep this at maybe 0.2 to 0.4. Okay, this is the most natural range. And you guys got to get to experiment with this when you're testing your voice AI. Okay, I'm going to tell you the same thing that I would tell myself when I was starting to build this stuff is test as much as you can these different configurations, because really what you have here is you have a kitchen. Okay, and this kitchen has a bunch of different things, and you have to kind of find the best formula for what works for your specific use case. So, which means with that being said, is you can come here and you can play with these knobs. Let's just say we want it at 0.1, and we're going to click publish on this so that way it saves the setting. And then you're going to get to test it by talking to the voice AI and seeing if this is natural. And if you see that it's not natural, well, obviously you want to go back to this knob and increase it more. And you're going to want to make sure that you get into the habit of doing this, because a lot of voice AI building is not just the building itself. It's actually the refinement, because this part right here is making sure that you're refining the settings for what it needs to have in order to sound and act and be as natural as possible. I think I probably put it at 0.2 for the most part. I don't really make it more than 0.2. If anything, I'll probably make it less, but for the most part, this should be good at 0.2. Right under that, you have something called smart endpointing. What this is just a way for us to accurately pinpoint when somebody stops speaking. When is the last time that they say something in a sentence? And in this, you have different options. You have VAPI controlling this smart endpointing. Basically, VAPI system gets to decide when somebody stops talking. And then you have another thing called LiveKit. Okay, this LiveKit is just a whole other company provider, and they do the same thing. Okay, they help this voice AI in determining when somebody actually stopped talking. So between these two different options, you can keep it as VAPI, you can put it as LiveKit. I suggest just leaving it as VAPI. This worked for me for the most part. But if you put it at LiveKit, you have other options right here, which is a little bit more advanced, where you can determine how aggressive the system is or how conservative it is at determining those stop points. For the most part, I like to just keep this at VAPI and let VAPI handle all this stuff because it works for the most part. What happens is you can detect this specific voicemail and you can have your AI do something specific because it found out that it's hitting a voicemail. And in here, you have different options. You have a VAPI option, Google, OpenAI, and Twilio. Recommended for me is also going to be VAPI. When I click this, you're going to have different options for what it should do and what it should not do when it hits voicemail. So you can see initial detection delay. What this is a delay before the very first detection check. How many seconds do you want to wait before that detection figures out if the person that's talking is a voicemail or if it's a person? You can leave this at 5 seconds. That's a pretty normal range. And then you have detection retry interval. This is an interval between the cycles of how many times it checks. So if you wanted to do more than one check, this is the seconds that it waits before it tries again to figure out if this is a voicemail or not. And right now this is set at 5 seconds. I think this is also natural, so keep it at 5.
Would you use that in the sense that like your voice agent is calling somebody?
There's no way that somebody can call you and be in voicemail, right? That's just not possible.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when your voice AI is talking to somebody, when it calls them, this is for outbound. We're not really working with outbound right now. We're working with inbound.
All right, that pretty much clarified what I was wondering. But keep going. My bad.
So these are just different settings for what it should do to determine if it has a voicemail or not, right? And so here you have detection retries. How many times is it going to retry? Sometimes people will have automated voicemail where it's their voice and they might be telling somebody to leave a message. But it might not start off with leave me a message. It might start off with something else. Hey, thanks for calling, da da da. And then at this point, the voice AI has two options, right? Is it gonna try to figure out if that's a voicemail, or is it gonna try to answer it and talk to it like it's a real person? Or at that point, if it talks to if it's a real person, you could be wasting resources, right? You could be wasting tokens, you could be wasting the components, which is obviously like it's not free, it's being paid, it's per minute. So you want that conversation to be cut off as quickly as possible when the AI itself detects that it's speaking with a voicemail instead of just letting it blab on and that call go forward and you're just wasting money for no reason. So that's what this is, okay? Max detection retries. How many times is it going to retry at a maximum? Now this goes with these two options, right? If we're checking every 5 seconds and we put it at a max detection retry of 6, 5 times 6 is 30, meaning potentially you could waste 30 seconds of a phone call just trying to figure out in the beginning to detect if there's a voicemail or not. Do you want that to be quicker? Do you want it to be slower? It doesn't matter. It's completely up to you. I'm going to put this at 3, okay? I'm going to say try 3 times for a maximum of 15 seconds to detect if this is a voicemail or not. I don't think a lot of automated voicemail messages last more than 15 seconds without really, sounding like a voicemail. I think this is pretty normal. If you really wanted to make sure that this is a voicemail, you can leave it at 4 and just extend it to 20 seconds. And then right under that, you have an option for max voicemail message wait. What this is the maximum wait time before leaving voicemail message. So the beautiful thing about voice AI is it can actually leave a voicemail when that person does not pick up the phone call. And this applies for outbound voice AI. So this is the amount of time that it waits before leaving the voicemail. You can just leave this at 0. There's no sense in really waiting to leave that voicemail because you're just going to have a bunch of dead air in the beginning of that call. So we're going to leave this at 0. We're not going to make it wait anymore. And that is pretty good for this voicemail detection section. Right under it, you have stop speaking plan. Okay, this is for when and how the AI should react when it needs to stop speaking. And right under that, you have a bunch of different sections. Right here, the first one is very important. Okay, this is how many words the customer needs to say before the AI stops talking. And the reason this is important, Miles, is imagine there's background noise. Okay, if you have this at 0, the voice AI itself could super easily stop talking because it heard one word that came from somewhere in the background noise, which obviously would just stop it in its tracks. This is a bad experience. You want to make sure that the number of words that somebody says or the AI hears is reasonable for it to actually say, you know what, I need to stop talking right now and hear what's being said. If it hears 2 words consecutively back to back, now, for the most part, I like to leave this as 2, maybe 3 words. I think this is pretty natural. 3 words, you're pretty safe. 2, it might stop, but you're really leaning on the background denoising to really do its thing for it to maybe not stop after the 2 words. So you want to keep this at 3 words or 2 words. You can test out and figure out what's going on. And this is impacted by how much background noise and what's happening in those phone calls in the area that the calls are actually happening in. So for me, I'm going to keep this as 2 words, and if we need to move it up, we'll just move it up later. Now, the second option right under it is voice seconds, okay? This is how many seconds the person that's talking to your voice AI needs to speak before the AI actually stops. So you can see we have 2 options, right? We have words and we have time. And the maximum you have here is half a second. So basically just means if somebody speaks for half a second, the voice AI will stop and assume that somebody is talking to it. I find that the best way to leave this natural is just to kind of put it in the middle at 0.2. You can't really make it at 0.25, so we're going to leave it at 0.2. And again, when you are testing this system, you want to make sure you're testing these things in that testing process, and you can play with these knobs and make sure that they fit whatever setting and scenario that you're building the voice AI actually for. And then finally, under that, you have back off seconds. This is the number of seconds to wait before the voice AI starts talking to it again. So when it gets interrupted, right, there's going to be a duration for when it starts talking again. And this is what that duration is talking about right here. You have a maximum of 10 seconds and you have a minimum of 0 seconds. I think the most natural setting here is 1 second, right? When somebody interrupts it or when somebody says something in the middle of it speaking, it's just going to wait a second and then it's going to respond. Okay. That's what this knob right here is for. So this is the settings that I'm going to leave at this, and I'm going to click publish at the top. So that makes sure this is saved as it is, and this is good to go. Once again, you want to make sure you're testing these things, okay? Don't just take the settings for what it is because every build is different, okay? Some companies are going to have quieter settings in the background where you have more leeway to make the thing act and perform a little bit quicker, whereas some of them have a little bit more background noise. So you want to make sure you're filtering through the background noise by maybe increasing the number of words that the voice AI needs to hear before it stops talking, and vice versa, right? So you can see you have decisions here to make based on what the setting is around the voice AI and what's happening in those phone calls. Okay, and now right under that, you have call timeout settings. Okay, this is when somebody does not speak for this many seconds, I am gonna end the call. That's what this setting means. This means is basically, right, how long to wait before the call is automatically ended due to inactivity. You don't wanna waste all your money in a phone call where nobody's saying anything. So we're going to put this at, you know what, 30 seconds is pretty natural, okay? If there is nothing being said on the phone for 30 seconds, the call is going to end automatically. That's what this setting right here is responsible for. And then right under that is your maximum duration of the call. How long should a call typically go for? You can see you have a maximum of 43,200 seconds, which is 720 minutes, okay? 720 minutes is 12 hours, okay? That's a lot. And you want to make sure you set the setting based on what is realistic for that phone call, okay? If you averaged out that a lot of the calls that are happening should never go more than 5 minutes, you want to figure out how many seconds that is and make sure that this is set right here. Otherwise, you're just going to have a run on call and it's just going to run and run and run. And obviously these calls are not free, right? So they're going to be costing you. And this is where you tame that, okay? This is where you make sure that you have a maximum ceiling for how long these calls should go. Does that make sense?
Yeah, if it put it on hold, would that use the time?
So this time right here is for the call in general, right? It doesn't matter if it's on hold or not. Now, if you do put the thing on hold and nobody says anything for 30 seconds, you can see that the call is going to be ended because you set right here 30 seconds. If nobody says anything, you should end the call. So if you're expecting hold times, then you want to make sure that these are configured. Keep that in mind, right? If somebody could potentially put a thing on hold, you want to make sure that that hold is not longer than 45 seconds potentially, right? So you can then change this from 30 to 45, where if for some reason that hold goes over 45 seconds, you want the call to be ended. And then right under that, Miles, you have keypad input settings. If you want your voice AI to receive things on the phone keypad, you can actually turn that on right here, okay? This is kind of like the normal voice system where it's like press 1 for this, press 2 for that, or type in your, your phone number on the keypad. This just allows things to be received by the voice AI through the keypad. Now, this is really helpful when you want to collect some things that maybe deal with numbers, okay? And you don't want the transcription to handle these numbers, right? Maybe somebody says 314 da da da. If they're just saying it, there is a slight potential where maybe that transcription could mess up and the number 4 then be transcribed to 5 instead. If you wanted to 100% make sure that whatever numbers are being sent to your voice AI are what they are, you can turn on keypad and then you can set one of these down here. They're called delimiters. This is just basically the button that somebody has to press first before typing in something in the keypad. This is very standard, very generic. Every time you talk to a voice system and they're like, type in your phone number and press pound after. This is what that setting is, okay? So you can basically prompt your voice AI to tell people to type in some sort of number, but make sure to type pound either in the beginning or after it to make sure that the AI knows whatever it's about to receive is from the keypad and it can actually process it and do things with it. So that's what this setting right here is. And you can see right in the middle, you have timeout, okay? This is the number of settings to wait before processing whatever somebody put into the keypad. If somebody typed in a bunch of stuff and they're done, this is how many seconds the thing waits to accept whatever somebody typed, okay? If they typed in a full phone number or they typed in a social security number, but maybe they just like forgot a few numbers, right? They needed a few seconds. If you have this at like 0, for example, what's going to happen is somebody on the phone is going to wait a few seconds to try and remember what they need to type, but your system already processed the thing, which obviously is a big mistake. So this is a very important setting, right? It's probably good to have it at, say 3.5 to 4 seconds, just because you can assume if somebody stops typing on the keypad and 4 seconds go by that they're probably done. And you can see down here, you have both options, right? You have the pound sign, you have the asterisk sign. Either one of them could be used as the signal for when somebody's going to start typing into the keypad. Again, very important settings if you're using keypad with your voice AI. And then lastly, you have a section called messaging, okay? Now, this is very important. We're not going to cover all of it, okay? I'm going to cover a small part of it, and then we're going to come back to it later when we're configuring our tools, because some of this relates to tool configuration. So if we go down here, you can see that when your voice AI decides to leave a voicemail, you can actually type a sentence that specifically defines what it's going to say when it's leaving a voicemail. So this ties to those voicemail settings that we configured earlier, right? When the voice AI detects that it's speaking to a voicemail and it knows that this is a mail, what do you want it to specifically say? This is where you're going to be able to configure that, and the voice AI is going to say these words when the call is forwarded to voicemail. It's pretty straightforward. It's pretty standard. You're just going to type whatever that is, and it's going to say that. And then right after it is your end call message. This is the last sentence that the voice AI is going to say before it hangs up, okay? So when the voice AI determines that this is the end of the conversation, it's going to say whatever you guys type here, and then it's going to end the call right after it. It's literally that straightforward. So that's where you're going to get to configure these two things: the voicemail message, what it says when it knows that it's hitting a voicemail, and what it says at the very, very end of the phone call. They're going to be down here. And then you have an option under that. This is idle messages. What this is these are messages that the assistant is going to say when a user has not responded. Okay, let's just say it said something and it had no response back. If you click this, you have a bunch of different, like, very, very quick sentences. For example, are you still there? Is there anything else I can help you with? Could you ask me whatever? You can, select from a bunch of different pre-configured sentences here, or you could just select all of them and just have it rotate between, whichever ones it decides it needs to say. That's probably the easiest thing you can do here, is just select all. But if for some reason you wanted specific ones, you can just select the specific ones you want and keep it as it is. I'm just going to select all, keep it as it is. And then down here, you can determine how many times these messages should be said in that call, okay? Maybe you wanted to say it only once, and then after that, it should end the phone call. Or maybe you wanted to say it, a maximum of 5 times, and after that, it should end the phone call. Whatever many times that it needs to say these things, you can determine that down here. And then right under it, this is the timeout in seconds before a message is said. How much dead time, right? How much space needs to happen before the AI decides that it needs to say one of these messages? This is where you're going to be able to configure that down here, right? So if the phone call was quiet for 8.8 seconds, now the AI, what it's going to do is it's going to go ahead, it's going to choose one of these, it's going to say it out loud, and then it's going to wait another 8.8 seconds. And if it's still quiet, it's going to go ahead and do another one. So you can see these settings, they tie in with some of the older settings that we configured for how many seconds the call could even go on and how many seconds the call needs to be quiet before it ends the call by itself. So you need to make sure that you're keeping both of these into account, right? They kind of play with each other. Right? Obviously, I'm talking about these ones, right? How long to wait before a call is automatically ended, and the maximum number of seconds a call will last. These will definitely work with these settings down here. So now let's just go ahead and quickly configure our end call message, right? What's the very last thing that it should say? Thanks for calling and have a good one. Give us a call back if you need anything else. I'm just going to keep it at that. Very short, very sweet, very simple. And then I'm going to click publish and then skip and publish. And now all of these settings are saved. They should be good to go. So boom, we see that green message down here says all the settings were saved, and that's it. So now, Miles, we're at the point where we can test our voice AI system, and that's exactly what we're going to do right now. And this is moment of truth, a very fun moment when you're doing it for the very first time. And the quickest way that you're going to do that is by clicking this talk button at the very top. Now, obviously, another way to test it is if you assign it a number, you can just call the number that you assign it and do that. Right now, we haven't assigned it any phone numbers yet, but I'm going to show you guys how to assign it. And when we assign it, you can just call the number on your phone. So that way you can get a real test for what it sounds like when somebody would call it. For right now, we're going to do a web call. And that's how we're going to do that, by clicking the talk button at the very, very top right. And as soon as you click it, it's going to try to use your mic to put the assistant on the phone. Here's a very, very tiny problem because Miles and I are recording and we're screen recording everything right now. The mic is being used between me and Miles. So if I click talk right now, you guys are going to hear the voice AI say those very first sentences that it needs to say. But when I speak back to it, it's not actually hearing me because the mic is being used by a conversation that I'm having with Miles. So right now what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna click talk, let you guys hear it for the first time, and then I'm gonna go to the part where we assign it a phone number very quickly. So that way for the future test, I'm gonna just use my phone, call it, and then that way you guys can hear it on the mic through my phone. So let me just go ahead and click talk, and you guys are gonna see what that sounds like. If you have a mic hooked up, you should be able to just talk to it on the web, kind of like this. It'll work perfectly fine. But obviously, because I'm using the mic with Miles, it's not gonna work right now for us. We're gonna do a quick workaround. So boom, here we go.
Hey, thanks for calling Miles Company, LLC. What can I help with today?
Boom. Obviously, we know it doesn't hear us, but obviously, you guys can see it used the very, very first sentence that we cooked up into it. Hey, thanks for calling Miles Company LLC. What can I help you with? The LLC sounded a little bit robotic. I'm probably just going to remove that, click publish, and then talk to it one more time and see how it sounds like without saying that.
Hey, thanks for calling Miles Company. What can I help with today?
Yeah, that sounds way cleaner, way smoother. So right now, because I want to test it, I want to talk to it. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly assign it a phone number, and I'm going to show you guys how to assign it phone numbers. It is extremely easy. And the way we're going to do that is by going to phone numbers on the very, very left side. When you click phone numbers, here you're going to have a bunch of different options. You can either import phone numbers from other phone number providers, and these are going to be those phone number providers that allow you to make phone calls over the internet, right? I kind of explained to you guys what they are. They're going to be SIP providers. Things like Twilio, Vonage, or you can actually get numbers directly from Vappy, which is going to be the easiest thing that you guys can do. And another beautiful thing about Vappy is they give you 10 free phone numbers before you even have to pay for anything. All you have to do is you have to just type in whatever area code you want, and then it's going to go ahead and spin one up for you. So what area code is your area, Miles?
602.
All right.
Phoenix, baby!
602. All right. So we're going to type in 602 for Phoenix. We're going to click on create. And then what happens is, okay, so the area code is not available. So all of the Phoenix numbers are gone. Do you have another phone number or another area code?
505.
Let's try 505. And okay, it looks like all of 505 is gone too, bro.
Let me see if I have a 970 that's Pennsylvania. Let me see if I remember it.
So
yeah, fuck it. Try 970. That's just Pennsylvania, though.
Okay, it gave us suggestions that it knows it has available. So we know that 970 is available, but you know, if you wanted to really make sure that the area code is belonging to whatever area that you guys are from, if those phone numbers are gone from Vappy, you're probably going to have to import them from Twilio. But let me tell you guys, for the most part, if you're just getting off the ground and you haven't sold anything yet, this is not a big deal. Try one of these so that way you can get through the front door. And when it comes time for you to get a phone number, you can easily get one from Twilio and import it. The whole entire process probably takes like 15 to 20 minutes, and it's not too complex. But for right now, right, you want to make sure that we are validating the thing we're building. So I'm just going to go and grab a 970 phone number, click create. And then what happens is it should find a number for you, and then it should activate it, right? So right now what it did is it found a phone number. We have a 970-455-1692. And you can see right now it says activating. At the very top, there's a timer. It's a 2-minute timer. And this is just the time it takes for it to activate this phone number right now. So we're just going to wait this before we can actually get to assign it to an assistant and call it. So while we're waiting, what we're going to do is we're going to label the phone number. We're going to give it a name. This is all this is just a label. And this is super helpful for when you have a bunch of different AI assistants and a bunch of different numbers. For the most part, we're going to want to name this to the company that this phone number belongs to. So we're going to say this is Miles Company LLC. So that way we're not getting confused. We can see that the provider down here, the company that's providing this phone number, is Vappy. And then right here, we have some settings that we don't really need to do. This is a little bit of an advanced thing, so I'm going to skip over it. And then you have a section called inbound settings. This is where you can assign your phone number to your AI assistant. So right here, you can see that this is the number. If I click the drop down that says select assistant, you can see we have 2 of them. These are just the 2 different voice AIs that we created already inside of our Vappy account. I'm just going to select the one that I want this phone number to go to. That's going to be this Miles copy one. This is the one that we made all of the different changes to. You don't have to worry about squads, right? The squads is that feature that allows you to create a bunch of different agents and kind of connect them together. This is a little bit of an advanced thing, so we're not going to go over it. And we're not going to go over workflows. We're going to skip that. Another one of those advanced things. And then down here, you have fallback destination. This is only really reliable when you're using squads and workflows. Right now, we're not. But basically, this is if the assistant or the squad is for some reason not working that the call gets transferred to, you have a phone number as a fallback that the call would be transferred to. Obviously, we're not using any of these, so we're not even going to get to configure this. And then down here, you have some outbound settings. Outbound, aka when the voice AI itself makes a phone call. For our case, it's inbound, right? People are going to be calling in to our voice AI. Now, let me show you one crazy feature right here. Miles, do you remember in our whiteboard phase when we said that there's a potential for us to upsell plumbers to have our voice AI call a bunch of people in their CRM during those slow seasons? Remember how we researched that the slow season was like February?
Yes, sir.
This is literally in a few different clicks exactly that, bro. If you can get the phone numbers, a bunch of different phone numbers for all these people that the voice AI needs to call and talk to and try to recover some of that business during the slow season, that package by itself is worth a few $1,000s. And it's so easy to configure because what you can do is you can get a CSV, which is a Google Sheet or an Excel. This is something you can get from the CRM and it's going to have all those phone numbers. You can upload it in here and you can call multiple numbers by just selecting an assistant that you configured to make those phone calls. And then you can click a button that says make calls. And this is literally going to call every single number one by one and try to upsell them or recover business during those slow seasons. Miles, this by itself, this feature is an upsell that's worth at least $2,000, assuming that the voice AI can recover more than that, bro.
Yeah, this is literally a cold caller.
This is a live cold caller right here, okay? This could be upsold in so many different ways, and you can see how easy it is for you to do that. You can upload a CSV full of phone numbers, and you can just click one button, and with the outbound voice AI that you build, it will go through and call every single number and do everything that it needs to do and potentially recover a bunch of different revenue for a company. This by itself is a service that you can upsell to different people. And look at how easy it is for you to just access it and use it, bro. It's actually ridiculous. So you can see right now, the timer is gone, meaning the phone number is activated. We already assigned the phone number to our AI assistant right here. So I'm going to click this save button at the very top. We can see the success message down here, which means it was saved. So right now, if we call this number on our phone, the voice AI should pick up. So now I'm on my phone. I'm just going to call it 970-455-1692. I'm going to click call and we're just going to talk to it.
Hey, thanks for calling Miles Company. What can I help with today?
Hey, I have a broken pipe in my house. What should I do?
I'm sorry to hear that. Sounds stressful. Is the pipe actively leaking or flooding?
No,
right
it's
now?
not. It's not
Or
leaking
is it
right now.
something Okay, got it.
What I'm doing right now is I'm testing how natural it is for it to stop speaking and then start responding to me. So far, I love this, bro. I think it's pretty natural, right? It's kind of like speaking a little bit more, but then it's waiting for about a second and then responding back to me. What did you just say? I didn't really hear you.
Sorry about that. We're based in insert primary location from knowledge base, and we cover insert service area.
So you can see how it says we are based in insert primary service and we are based in insert that out from knowledge base. It's saying this because we never configured a knowledge base inside of it. So right now I'm asking about like physical location and it just doesn't have that information in its system prompt, right? You can see down here in the system prompt section where it would have a knowledge base. We didn't really put anything in here. Hey, so could you tell me what is your service area? It's literally going to say this, by the way.
We serve insert service area from knowledge base. What's the city or zip code for your pipe?
It's saying from knowledge base. It doesn't have it, bro. Quick question for you. What is your hours?
Sure. What's our office hours or insert hours from knowledge base? We're available for emergencies, insert emergency availability from knowledge base. Now,
you see how it doesn't even know what it needs to say to us? Because it is literally looking at this knowledge base word for word to know what information needs to say back to people. This is the importance of knowledge base, okay? Knowledge base is one of the most important things that you can cook into a voice AI when it needs to respond about specific details relating to the company. And of course, this knowledge base needs to be in Markdown, and it needs to be accurate, because this is going to be its source of truth for maybe what hours the company is, or what's the services they provide, or like, what's the company about. All these different things you're going to have to bake into the knowledge base before the AI knows what to say back to the person. But for the most part, I'm pretty happy about how long it takes to stop, how long it takes to start talking again. And I'm pretty happy about, the delays, all these different settings that we configured in the advanced, the stop and start talking. I think it's pretty natural. I like this. So what I'm gonna do next right here, Miles, is I'm gonna test one more thing, okay? So now, Miles, we are at this testing phase, okay? And what we're gonna do is we're just gonna go through and make sure that these little different settings right here are good, okay? These are like not bad settings. And realistically, if you could have somebody from the company that's working with you to make sure that this system is good to go, this is a great time for them to kind of test this stuff, right? Tell them to interrupt it. Tell them to not say anything for 30 seconds. Tell them to do all these things so that way you can figure out what needs to happen here. And this is literally what that looks like. It's just calling the assistant and making sure that the settings you configured into it are good to go. How fast is it talking? How much is it waiting? All these different things. So I'm not going to bore you guys with testing literally every single setting here, because this in itself is its own thing. You guys can just call it and try these different things and make adjustments on the fly. But for right now, I'm pretty confident in my settings. I like these settings because I've used them before. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on from this testing phase, and we're going to now configure the next thing, which is going to be giving it a proper knowledge base and configuring tools.
That would more depend on like the company that you're selling it to, right?
Yes. Here, let me end the recording real quick.